Fear is always the language of a false identity. God will not speak to a false identity. He speaks to the person he created. He saw a worshiper. He saw a leader. He saw a vessel of living water. That is the foundation of fearless living. Fear is always the language of a false identity. When you are struggling, when you're making a decision or deciding to say something, any kind of action is either rooted in love or fear. And when the enemy is trying to steal your God-given identity and calling, it will be rooted in fear. So we're just going to look at a few, get some identity insights from the word here, from Jesus' life. And so the first thing to point out again, just like how I mentioned at the beginning, when we were created in God's image, he called us his own before we did one thing. And we see this in the life of Jesus. Before Jesus did anything, before he did any miracle, before he started walking in the fullness of his ministry calling, the Father spoke identity over him. And that is the foundation of fearless living. So Matthew 3:16 and 17. This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. That is the foundation of fearless living, of hearing what God says about you. And listen, don't get into like, oh, this is a self-help message, self-esteem book. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something much deeper than that your life flows out of. And I love just how much Jesus knew who he was and exactly what he was called to do. In John 5:18, there were accusers that came against Jesus' identity. And listen to how he responds. So the Jewish leaders tried all the harder to find a way to kill him, for he not only broke the Sabbath, he called God his Father. That's an identity statement, thereby making himself equal with God. So Jesus explained, I tell you the truth. The Son can do nothing by himself. He does only what he sees the Father doing. Whatever the Father does, the Son also does. For the Father loves the Son and shows him everything he is doing. And I love how Jesus establishes who he is. And guess what? He's not living in fear that I have to perform, I have to do this. I do what I see my Father doing. He shows me. My Father shows me from identity. Okay, the next person we are going to look at is the woman at the well in John 4. So you can open your Bibles to John 4. I'm going to kind of go through a bunch of different verses in there. First of all, for those of you that don't know the story, there is a woman at a well. She's a Samaritan, and she is getting water at the well, and she goes at noon. Okay, so she comes to the well at noon at the hottest point of the day. Most of the other women would come early in the morning or late in the evening. Noon is when you went if you didn't want to be seen. Okay, so that tells us something about her. In John 4:18, we learn, it tells us that her life is marked by broken relationships. 5 husbands and now living with a man who isn't her husband. In her society, that would make her an outcast. She's likely been used, discarded, and devalued over and over. So we could say her identity was shaped by shame, disappointment, and the fear of being alone. She likely believes that her value is tied to being chosen or loved or wanted by a man. And yet, we see her here isolated. John 4:17 and 18, "I have no husband," she replied. Jesus said to her, "You are right. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now are with is not your husband." And so when Jesus is saying this, he's not shaming her. That's not what it is. He's speaking the truth in love. He reveals her story not to judge, but to show that he knows her fully. He knows everything about her and still engages with her with dignity. Some of the lies she might have believed. If I'm not needed or wanted by someone, I'm not valuable. My past disqualifies me from anything sacred. Her identity has been shaped by survival, self-protection, social isolation, and all of those are driven by fear. I love how Jesus speaks to her. He knows her fully, and that's how he speaks to you too. Here's another quote from the book. "God will not speak to a false identity. He speaks to the person he created." You know, sometimes we come to the Lord and we're actually presenting somebody that we are not. Like we don't even feel like we can be fully who God's made us to be. And I was thinking this morning in worship, because that was just so powerful, and want to thank John today specifically for plowing through for us, expressing so much joy and leading us so well. But there's a reason why many people will say, when I'm going to church on Sundays, I feel so good, or I went to church and I just needed that fill up. I feel so good. And there is a reason beyond just the fact that we know that music, whether it's spiritual or not, makes people feel better. People that listen to music, play music, are usually healthier people. So we know that there is definitely something about that. But I believe why we feel so built up is because when we are worshiping, when we are singing those songs, we are acknowledging exactly and declaring who God is with our mouths, with our bodies, with our expressions of love. And in order to worship God as he is, there has to be an alignment of who we are. And so for these times when we're together as the family of God, you are actually functioning as a child of God. You are functioning from the identity that he gave you when you worship. And so, there's so much to that. What would it look like if every one of your days started with that alignment of acknowledging who God was, and in turn saying, "God, what do you say I am? What do you speak over me today?" I love that Jesus speaks to her true identity. John 4:10, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." John 4:23, "Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. The Father is seeking such people to worship him." So Jesus is speaking to her with dignity and is saying, you are the kind of person the Father is seeking. Her gender, her race, her past, none of it disqualified her. And it's so powerful that he revealed himself as the Messiah to her. And it's one of the clearest revelations of his identity in the Gospels. And that's in verse 26. So we see this woman. What happens next? Her transformed identity. The woman who came to the well in silence runs back to town with a message. Her shame is replaced with boldness. The fear's gone. John 4:28 and 29. Then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah?" John 4:39. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. And some say it's very interesting that it says, leaving her water jar behind. I don't know, when you're just reading that, you're like, okay, why is she leaving? But people would say that the water jar she left behind is symbolic, that she no longer needs to rely on old sources of identity for survival. She has received living water. Jesus did not ignore her past, he redeemed it. When he looked at her, he did not see her through a lens of shame. He saw a worshiper. He saw a leader. He saw a vessel of living water. Fear kept her isolated, but now, understanding, receiving who Jesus said she was, she's out boldly sharing with others. So think of that. Hiding in shame, going to the well at noon so no one would see her, to going and being like an evangelist, telling everybody. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed because of her testimony. So living fearless means you stop hiding your story and let Jesus use it. You believe that being fully known by God doesn't lead to rejection. It leads to restoration and purpose. You go from being someone who avoids people to someone who leads people to Jesus.